there was an instance where we had asked somebody to go get us iron rods, and half-inch iron rods, 1 ton. I know how many pieces should be in there, but apparently where he buys from, they always take 10 off the number, and hardly do you go to site to say, I'm going to count the number of rods in a ton.
That's a lot of
so you don't do that kind of check, you don't do that kind of work. But there are all kinds of tricks, when it comes to material purchases, and that is why it's always important. Always have somebody who has a certain depth of knowledge in these things to guide you, or to point you the right way, or to the right place where you know for sure that they will give you the correct specification and sizing.
I agree.
Within the market are different materials of the same species, maybe. If you take, say, sand, usually people say, I need 2 trips of sand. And our lay mind measures sand in trips. But there are different buckets of the truck that is bringing the sand. So sometimes what happens is the guy comes to quote to you a trip of sand. He actually means maybe an 18 cubic. But because you are not aware, he brings you a 12 cubic. When he tips it down, as a lay mind, you will never see what he's brought you. You take iron rods. When you talk half-inch iron rods, which is something that most people relate to, within the half-inch bracket of iron rods, there are about 3 different sizes. You can have 11, 11 and a half, 12, 12 and a half, So most of the artisans we send to go and buy as these things, you send your steel bender. I'm not saying all of them, but majority of them find their way around these things. You want half-inch iron rods, it just goes to get you 11 and a half instead of 12. He pockets the difference. Take wood. A carpenter will charge you for wawa boards. Wawa boards is a higher species. It costs more. And indeed, if you check on the market for wawa board, what he has charged you is correct. But what he would deliver at your site for the work is not wawa board. All right, and you will never know, because for you, any wood that looks, is it creamish or something?
Light
cream or something is wawa board. But within that space, there are different wood materials. And then you take odum, which is the most preferred for roofing materials. But within that, you have dahoma, you have all kinds of things. So it's always not the very best to want to do these things yourselves. In fact, those who attempt to take as it were the entire thing into their own hands end up eventually losing out, rather than if they had engaged some professionals, people who actually know the market, can tell the difference.
One of the functions of, say, a window is to allow both light and ventilation. So depending on the use of the space, you may want to size your window appropriately, so that you can have maximum benefit from lighting, good lighting and ventilation. So yes, we take all that into consideration. Even in orientation of the building, we don't make sure that, say, your bedrooms, most of your living spaces have good natural ventilation as much as possible. Doing that will help you cut down the cost of using your AC, because your rooms are always hot and you need to turn on the ACs and so on. So it's a process that involves quite a bit. You need to think through all these things very carefully. And again, it reflects in things like sizes of doors and windows and, positioning, orientation, things like that.
Let's delve a lot deeper into the specifications. What goes on at that point?
All right. So once the architect has come up with the design, the structural engineers have done their bit, all the other professionals have made their inputs. The critical other bit is to have a specifications list or book or document. That document takes the entire design and tears it down to the basics. What should be in the foundation?
Okay.
In the foundation, you would have concrete, but what kind of concrete mixes? What type or what textures or what strengths should be the components of the the elements that go into, say, the concrete works. So everything is very important, and the specifications actually details out to the very minutest point as to what things should be done: sizing, weights, strengths. Every material comes with different properties. So even with, if you say blocks, its crushing strength, its size, its mix, its curing period, all of that has to be detailed out and clearly spelled out to the contractor. And the contractor in building is not only to follow what is on drawing, but more especially also what is in the specifications, because that is critical. If you, and then again, I mean, the specifications equally inform the cost. All right, because if for a particular wall, the architect is specified that it should be 6 inches solid, that has a different cost from if he had said 6 inches hollow, or a different cost from if he had said 5 inches solid. So dimensions, sizing, weight, specifications, and all of that inform so much, when it comes to construction.
How then do I ensure the right materials are being used? Okay.
So the first way to ensure the right materials are being used is to use the right professionals. Because the professionals will detail out for you right at design stage what materials they want. The architect would always have in mind a certain concept. He will always have in mind at the end of the project how the visuals should look like. So it's an interplay of strength of materials and the aesthetic appeal of the material. In some choices, he's making that because of a certain strength he wants to see in the project or by use of the material, and also the appeal. So the choice of materials was spun. From the foundation all the way till finishes and completion. At every stage, every level, there are choices that will have to be made, and those choices are very critical.
Right.
Depending on where you store your cement, over time it could cake and so on and so forth. So storage is important. But to conclude, let me equally say that always use a professional when it comes to choices of materials and the selection. And if you have to rely on your direct artisan or contractor, trust but always check. Because trust but always check, because chances are that something may not be right when it comes to purchases. So when it comes to shoddy works, a lot of things account for it. You're either looking at following quality standards and specifications, you're looking at the kind of workmanship that has been engaged in the work itself, or the materials that have been used. So shoddy work in itself can be a combination of all of these things coming together.
Okay, so how then do you check on that?
So for every project, you would have to have a certain hierarchy. All right, that's the word. A certain hierarchy of workforce. At the very top of it, you could have an overall project manager. You could have a contracts manager. You could have the supervising engineers, the supervising architects, the quantity surveyors, and all of them. Then it comes to on the ground direct supervision, which are the foremen, the senior foremen. Then it comes to headmen, the head artisans, the head workforce, and then it trickles down to then the actual artisans, masons, carpenters, steel bender, those people. And then you also come down to labor, ordinary laborers, unskilled labor. So in the labor bracket itself, you have the skilled labor and then unskilled labor. And all of these people work together to ensure that whatever you're doing is of good integrity.